The Final Frontier. These are your adventures as you explore, seeking out new life and civilizations, expanding your borders and exploiting the resources you find, befriending allies, or exterminating the foes that get in your way.
Contact detected entering sector. Configuration unknown. Assessing. Initiating countermeasures.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. If it's your first time here, thank you for joining us. And if you are a repeat offender, well, thank you for being so mischievous. Star Trek New Worlds, what is it? It is a turn-based strategy game that we play here online with you today, solely on YouTube. We play it inspired by the rule set of Federation Empire, as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau, and the magic of the map that you will see here shortly is through the magic of Vassal. In today's exciting episode, what will we be discussing? Well, I think to be able to discuss that, we will have to go to our newsroom. Welcome to the Galactic News Network. If it isn't true, we aren't telling it. Now, this is a bit of a draft of our newsroom. It'll improve as we go on here. But here we go. War and peace. The inevitable clash between the Kzinti and the Federation has come at last. A heavy force of Federation ships made a concerted attack on the Kzinti base in Sector Yankee 42. The Kzinti seemed to anticipate the attack and diverted every ship in the sector to defend the base. After a fierce firefight which resulted in heavy casualties on both sides, Federation forces withdrew back across the border. Reports have it that diplomatic back channels are still open between these two powers, and hopes remain that they will find a resolution before this skirmish escalates to full-scale war. Dead T-Red. After years of unproductive diplomatic talks with the independent Gorn world of Tyr, the Klingon Empire decided on a different approach. Mustering the largest fleet yet seen in galactic space, the Klingons let their displeasure be known to the government of Tyr. We have been reassured that their message was warmly received and that Tyr has now enthusiastically joined the Klingon Empire. This is a major coup for the Klingon diplomatic corps, so we have been told. In through the outdoor, subspace instability at the edge of Lyran space forced a gravity well into a complete Klein inversion, as scientists have described it. All traffic will now flow from Lyran space into Federation space. How will this affect long-term relations between the two empires? Only time will tell. Good fences and good neighbors. In the shadow of the short, sharp shock of the Federation Kzinti War, diplomats are working furiously to establish clear boundaries between these empires. One overzealous captain on patrol or a navigation error could lead to galactic bloodshed. Boundaries have already been drawn between the Borak and ISC, as well between the Tholians and the Kzinti. It seems the galactic map may be taking its final shape as each nation jockeys for the ever-shrinking, unexplored sectors of the galaxy. Breaking bad. Klingon internal security forces uncovered an illegal lab being operated on the fringes of Klingon space. How such an expensive facility could be operating without the knowledge of the government is a topic of much speculation. Some think a noble house may have sponsored it. Also unknown at this time is what kind of research the lab was performing. Recriminations run rampant regarding the reason for this renegade research was reputedly, or how this renegade research was reputedly run. And that, my friends, is the galactic news. Oh yeah, so we'll make some improvements on that that whole news set as we go forward. But in the short, what did you think? Our galactic news, as always, is populated, provided, and punctuated by our good friend and GM for New Horizons, Danielle. Sorry, not Danielle, but Daniel. So let's discuss, our New Horizons campaign. We are currently on turn 57. And if we're going to talk about the campaign, let's talk about the economics in our next screen. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, don't we love the graphs? Here we go. So running from the top to the bottom, as you can see there to that side. There we are, to that side. We see that the Tholians are now the lowest on the ladder as far as income with 55.55. The ISC at 56.5. You can see the Hydrons are creeping up at 58. The Lyrans just a smidge ahead of them at 58.5. The Borak, the Borak, no longer on the bottom of the barrel of the economic ladder. No, we have climbed to not the last position, not the third position, but quite literally the middle of the pack at number 5. 59. That's right. Ooh, I can't say how excited I'm about that. So 59 is the economy for the Borak. The Kzinti just beyond our grasp. We're at 62. The Paravians holding steady at the top tier, or at least the leading edge of the middle of the pack, are at 67. The Federation, the first of the top three, at 73.5. The Carnivan cracking 80 at 82. And the Klingons still light years ahead of everybody at 89.5. Oh my goodness. Now, you can see on the graph here, sort of down below me, on the corner over there, you can see the projections as we go. And I'm not sure, I mean, this is just a point of pride, but the pink, of course, the Borak are pink, the pink line is just a smidge above that yellow. It is just creeping out above the conglomeration, the consolidation, the grouping of those empires at the bottom of the ladder. So I'm very excited about that, obviously, and we'll see how things evolve as we go forward. But what do you think about our economic progress down there and over there? What do you think of where we're at? Right, let's slide back and chit chat. All right, so if you haven't already, then please feel free to be like Alan Weber, our latest subscriber down below. Thank you, Alan, for joining our community here as part of Star Trek New Worlds. You can also see that, or maybe if you're joining us live, we are in the double digits. Thank you for making us in that way. Please feel free to bring up the likes to the double digit component. If you like what we're doing here, if you like the graphs, if you like the news, if you like the swagger of my Shatnerian pause, then please feel free to hit that thumbs up button and get us going in the right direction. And of course, if you are enjoying the stimulation, the motivation, and the caffeination of this particular cohort of online courses? No. Whatever we're doing here, then please feel free. You can use that coffee QR code in between me and the chat, or head down to coffee.com/New Worlds, and you can fire a photon torpedo of goodness, caffeinated wonderness. And oh, ladies and gentlemen, it has just happened. Have you not seen? Oh my goodness. Oh, photon fired by Lost Muskrat. Lost Muskrat, thank you for the caffeinated goodness. Let me take a quick sip to celebrate. Yes. Obviously, I'm highly caffeinated today. Yes, so like Lost Muskrat, you too can fire your own very favorite photon in our general direction, whether that's a show of fan support or whether you just want to fire photons in my face. That's up to you. But as we work our way across the broadcast today, you will notice that down below me, that green progress bar is moving from one side to the other, and our goal today is 5. Much like the Tholians with their 5-5 on the economy, our goal today is 5. Photons or coffees, your choice. Of course, if you also want to carry on the photonic firing and caffeinated goodness and bitter banter and back and forth, then you can also join us on our Discord channel after this broadcast is done. If you are, ladies and gentlemen, a mystery antagonist has fired a second photon. Not one, but 2 photons have been fired in the first fraction, I should say, of this broadcast. Thank you so much for our mysterious antagonist. Quick sip to celebrate. Oh my goodness. Trying to get it down. There we are. So, my goodness, I'm choking. So much coffee. I think I need to be refreshed by this wonderful glass. Oh my goodness. Shameless plug. If you too would like to celebrate your beverage in the 4X New Worlds glass here, or perhaps more the generic New Worlds is your kind of cup of tea, then you can please feel free to head over to Star Trek or stnewworlds.com, and you too can get yourself a chalice to be able to chastise that parched throat of yours with whatever wonderful elixir of life that you would like to down your windpipe. But I digress. No more plugging, no more shameless commercialization of this wonderful topic that we love, known as strategy wargaming, and in this case, in the flavor of Star Trek. Let's get to the most stimulating, motivating, and wonderful thing, which of course is the map. All right. Yeah, you don't want to hear me chatting too much. Let's quickly go over our economic and fleet cap numbers. Now, we did the economics. We just did that on the graph visual representation, and you let me know in the chat below. Well, I guess it's not on this screen, but you let me know either in the comments or if you're watching us live today, you double-digit folks, in the chat. Excuse me, that coffee really is catching me on the way down. Let me know if you would like to see a graph as well of the fleet cap numbers, so we can see a progression and dips or whatever the changes are in everyone's fleet cap. This basically, that's the size of their military, right? The number of units they have, the total number of offensive and defensive firepower that they have. You let me know if that's something you want to see, and we can make it happen. You just let me know in the comments below, or of course in the chat, and we can make that happen. Okay, let's talk about ships in the deep here. The Borak, first on our list, just because it's alphabetical, have a total ship equivalence of 31. That's right, 31, lowest number on the board. Even the Vudar, a non-player faction, have more ships than the Borak. At least as a player faction, the Borak are the lowest on the table. They have 31 ships floating around deep space. They have 86 total attack factors, 182 on the defense, meaning their fleet cap is 185. So there's got to be a crippled ship, at least one I know is out there. The Carnivon, their neighbor to the north, the green team, you might say, have tripled, almost quite literally tripled the total number of ships that they have in their fleet. They have 92 versus the 31 of the Borak. They have a total attack factor of 200, which is, almost 2.5%, 2.5 times the total combat effectiveness of the Borak. Ooh, I don't know what's going to happen there. 381 on their defense factor and a fleet cap of 389. The Federation, somewhere in the middle here, south of the Borak, but still with that wonderful blue theme. They have 67 total ships, 144 attack, 264 defense fleet cap, I should say, of 267. The Gorn. Well, there are no Gorn as a player faction, but you can tell that there are many Gorn floating around as minor factions, as they got a total of 111 ships, according to this. That's crazy. But I won't spend too much time on our favorite lizard friends. Let's head over to our tentacled faction, the Hydrons, with a total number of ships of 54. That's much more reasonable as far as I'm concerned. 54 with 117 attack, 232 defense, and 235 for their fleet cap. The ISC, that's our yellow brothers in the northeast corner of the map. You can see them just in the corner there. The ISC have 34 ships, so just a little over the Borak count. They have a total attack factor of 78. Note that difference, Borak versus the ISC. 78 total attack, 162 defense with a total fleet cap of 168. The Klingons, biggest military in the galaxy, or at least according to Galactic News, have a total number of 126. They are, I believe, the only triple-digit faction for ship count in the game. 126 ships. Wow. Total attack factor of 327. What? And 538 defense factors, fleet cap of 575. They are, without a doubt, the faction to fear the most. The Kzinti, south of the, quite a bit south of the Klingon faction, and below their kitty cat cousins, the Lyrans, the Kzinti have 50 total ships in their fleet, and also 121 attack, 208 defense, 209 on their fleet cap. The kitties on top have 45. That's the Lyrans at 45 total ships, 103 attack, 227 fleet cap. The Paravians, that's our feathered faction, perhaps running afoul of the folks down below. They are at a total ship equivalent of 18. That seems extremely small. My red flags are flying. And they have a total attack factor of 62, 130 on the defense. The Tholians, who are our last faction on this list, player faction on this list, have a total ship count of 65 with a total attack factor of 116, 116, and 307. That's particularly notable considering the Tholians are known to have crappy ships in the beginning. That their total attack factor is better than the Borak. Oh my goodness. Good thing that those two folks are not neighbors and are on totally different sections of the map. Speaking of the map, hey, what do we have here? Let's start off with our big bad boys in black. The Klingon faction, that's right, top left corner. Let's zoom in and see what we can see as we slide on over. I'm going to start at the very top. You'll notice that white box, stabilized, size class 3. Yeah, that little guy. That's the illegal lab. So one of the things about this game that you may have noted is that we're not just a straight up war game. We're not just 4X, exploration, expansion, exploitation, and extermination kind of game. No. We are also a little bit of role playing involved. We add character in our interactions, or at least we try. And so with this political interaction, this role play component, one might think that this illegal lab might become a sore spot of diplomatic tensions. What is this illegal lab doing? What kind of things are going on? Is there perhaps at an institution like this, not to say it might be mirroring things that are happening in the real world, are they researching genetic weaponry, weaponized viruses to unleash upon a particular canine faction in the game? Perhaps it is a specific kind of flea that only affects those with fur. Perhaps it is a kind of mutagenic virus that is designed specifically to focus on those with the fangs to fear it. I don't know. We'll have to find out, but perhaps this might be a sticking point of diplomatic tension between different factions in the game. Perhaps our canine compadres in green might be a little concerned about the kooky crackpots that are working their way and their ridiculous magic in those sinister labs as funded by the Klingon Empire. Who knows what is going on? Oh, just don't know. Again, our role-playing players, character factions, will have to just make lemonade out of these confounding lemons in the north of the Klingon Empire. Sour blood wine shall be spilt for sure. But I digress. Let's carry on with sort of the other mysterious components in this game. Let's talk about the other factions down below, since we saw that the poor Tyrannese, Gorn, suffered. They were welcomed with open arms into the Klingon Empire after they changed their opinion and the way that they thought. Of course, that is how that story goes. Just for S&Gs, let's take away the ships. You can see that this right here is the planet of Tyr, annexed one turn ago, and extremely unhappy. Discontent, perhaps misunderstanding the political choices of their rulers. Right. So bringing back the ships here, you can see that there still are a number of F4 destroyers and a ground troop transport, the F4G commando ship, sitting there on top of the planet with a diplomat to support, to be able to improve the planetary attitude of that fearless faction that has been friendified. Right. What else do we have? We have the Riemann faction, that is the space vampires, as I like to call them, our alternate Romulans. Here in F11, you can see that they are also, they are the opposite of hateful. They are extremely happy with what the Klingons are doing. Who knows why that is the case? I mean, who would be happy with Klingons? I mean, unless, of course, you enjoy ribbed for your pleasure. This is an example of good stuff. I don't see any diplomats over here, so who knows how they got so happy. Perhaps they had a beef with the Gorn. Who knows? But nonetheless, happy plus is where they're at. Perhaps trade is in the future, and that will further improve their planetary attitude. Down to the very south, we have Verona with our good friends, the Romulans. They are indifferent to the Klingon faction completely. They couldn't care less one way or the other. And why is that the case? Well, if we check out minor fleets and we check out North Fleet, which is the Romulan fleet that's there, you will see they have a Kingbird, Warbird, a Falcon, which is a Mauler. Yes, 4 Hawks and a total of 8 frigates. Combined with their YDK and just single planetary ground base, I gotta admit, they're not looking overly secure when facing the biggest, baddest military in the game. Perhaps a concern for other factions. Obviously, the Romans, they're like Honey Badger. They don't, you know what I'm saying. Beyond that, we also have in the corner here a bunch of renegade auxiliary vessels that, if the past is prologue, will cause a little bit of problem. Cause a few problems, since there are 2 of them, for the Klingon faction. They will stir the pot and cause chaos depending on what's going on. However, you can see here that the Klingons are responding in kind with a C4, that's their dreadnought, plus 4, count them, 4 F4s. That's right, 4 for 4. That is more than enough to be able to demolish, slam dunk, or otherwise pound into the sand these mysterious raiders of some sort of another. We also have a D4, another cruiser, and expeditionary fleet. Let's take a quick look at what's in expeditionary fleet. Oh, we have a survey ship. You can see that here. I'll just put that right there. Prime team and a D4E. That's an exploration or survey ship. So you got a cruiser escort with a survey ship, and they're just doing nice things, checking things out. Nonetheless, this combined force is more than enough to be able to pound sand on these ridiculous raiders. Beyond that, what else we see? Let's start with the borders over on the Carnarvon side and work our way south. You can see here we continue to explore with these large exploration freighters. No threat there. And as we work our way south, what do we have? First, IWR. Now, I'm trying to remember what the IWR stands for. Please, I know the folks in the chat will get in there and let me know. But nonetheless, this comes from Federation Empire and the Starfleet universe, IWR. Anyways, squadron. Let's check it out. Klingons. Our Clinks. Oh my goodness. Where am I going to find this? Klingon. No, not logistic squadrons. Definitely not those. No, and no. IWR. That's, oh, hey, look at that. Imperial War Reserve. That's our IWR. And it is the first Imperial War Reserve squadron. Oh, look at that. That is a bunch, more than a bunch. That is a total of 5 Senko crippled F4s. Well, we know what's going on there. If we look at the second Imperial War Reserve, you will see another, how many? 6 crippled F4s. These are all the casualties from the assault on Tyr, it would seem. And then, of course, a crippled commando ship down here. And the 3rd War Squadron. Let's take a look at the Imperial War Reserve. Boom. Another, how many? 6. Is that 6? 6. So 6, 6, and 5 crippled ships getting repaired at, if we take away the ships real quick, a YDK, a YBS, and another YDK. Bring back the ships. You can see, again, not a lot of military presence on the Carnarvon border. Interesting to note. But as we cruise south to our crescent front line here, we can see, yes, we have large exploration freighters continuing to explore. We have cruisers in the background. And what's this? We have a tug with Red Fleet continuing to push south towards our Lyran faction. Let's take a quick look at what's in Red Fleet. That's our Duras friends. Red Fleet, well, it's an W-era exploration survey ship, so good stuff. Survey ship with a tug, survey ship right here, a D4 Aegis Command cruiser, West Fleet in the background. We'll take a look at that in a second. Another T4 here, that's a tug with some cruiser support. And, ooh, what do we got here? We got a, C4. C4, that is a dreadnought with a escort, 4 escort destroyers and a dagger team. There's also Northwest Fleet. Let's just start looking at these fleets. We got Northwest Fleet. Northwest Fleet, boom. Ooh, that's a bunch of E1Ts. So you put 3 of those bad boys together, they can do a lot of what a tug can do, which in this case probably is about extending supply. Excuse me. What else we got? We got another T4 at a YBS here. Small exploration freighter, another tug in the mix, and a YFL. Let's take away the ships real quick. You can see that it would seem as though the Klingons are on a base building barrage. 1, 2, that's 20 EP in the chamber, creating new bases as we go forward. Bring back the ships, and you can see that there is a definite push by the Klingon Empire to cut off the Lyrans from this sort of westerly side of the map, or at least they're trying to get as far south as they can get as fast as they can. The Lyrans obviously are quite, rumor has it, they are quite territorial, and there is a lot of business going on between them and the Klingons when it comes to the chitter-chatter of what's going on. Let's take a second and go back to the chat and see what you think about that. Oh, yeah. All right, so let's start with the top of the chat as I pop it out from my little window over here on the side. Boop, 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 boop. That's not what I'm looking for. There we go. Pop out. All right. Too bad I can't zoom in just to make it easier to read because, you know, my eyesight is going. Bill Smith is in the house. Lost Muskrat. Thank you. Firing our coffee first off in the broadcast. There we are. Devin Dean is in the house. Algorithm has been tickled. Woo! That's right. If you haven't already tickled the YouTube algorithm with that thumbs up like button, then you please feel free to do so while I take a sip of this caffeinated goodness right here, lubricating my larynx. Oh, yeah. George Forknell is in the house. Daniel Pew Pew is here. Howdy, Alan. Alan, our Mr. Weber, our latest and greatest subscriber. Daniel, I wonder if Shatnerian is in the Oxford English Dictionary yet. It damn well should be. That treasure, that global treasure, intergalactic treasure, now that he's been to space, Shatner should be commemorated, enshrined in his particular style of speech, so that we cannot lose the dramatic effect, the sarcastic sequence of syllables that he will unleash or has unleashed in the past to such sound effect. It's pretty impressive. Oh, Daniel, nice job on the news brief. Very nice, nice energy, Tony. Keep it up, George says. Boom, boom, boom. It's all the caffeination goodness. You keep those photons firing, and I'll keep up this energy. Bam. Yeah. Daniel, always try to drop a few Easter eggs in the news stories. if you know what I'm saying. Lost Muskrat, how did Klingons manage to double the number of ships since the last live stream? I don't know. They can sure build a lot, and keeping in mind that they can build small ships, at frigates that is, at their YDKs, and they've got more than a few of them. Just saying. Where do we got here? 3 or 4 sets of overbuilds plus YDK FFGs. Yeah. Lost Muskrat. Oof. Daniel Eastland says they have been building F4s like they were going out of style. And keep in mind, F4s in this game, there are limitations to how many ship slipways that you can have at any one time. For those of you who have not played this game with us, we allow, and different, as I say, we are inspired by Federation Empire, as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. We are not ruled by it because this is a homebrew game incorporating a 4X sort of open campaign style, and we have rules in play to facilitate the 4X that are different beyond and create a different flavor than straight up F&E. So if you like Cherry Coke, that's what we got, as opposed to Coke Classic. So it's up to you. You like it super sweet? I got some sweetness for you. The shipbuilding component only happens at homeworld. So, for example, when you look at the map, and we'll do that in a second, you'll notice the star on the map on the homeworld. That is the single location where ship slipways can be built. However, in order to facilitate frontline construction of warships, what we've done is instead of allowing smaller or medium-sized slipways, what we've done is we've allowed starbases and YDKs to be able to build small frigates class ships. Based on the tech level of the infrastructure, as in a YDK can build Y and W era frigates, and starbases, if it's a starbase M, it can build middle era or M era frigates, and if it's a full starbase without the M, then it can build GW, or the 4th tier of technology, frigates. But whereas in the past that number was limited by the number of frigate slipways you had at your homeworld, now there is no limitation. Boom, ladies and gentlemen. Let me finish this thought, and I will celebrate that caffeinated goodness. So yes, slipways, and every YDK / starbase that you build allows you to build an additional frigate. The limitations on slipways are thus: you have 3 maximum frigate slipways, 3 maximum destroyer slipways. Each one of those destroyer and frigate slipways can build a single ship per turn. And of course, they can be overbuilt as well. That's a component that was mentioned in the chat, for example. Then, in addition to that, we have limitations on above destroyers. There's light cruisers, command cruisers, and dreadnoughts, and then, of course, battleships. So light cruisers, you can only have 2 of those slipways, building in each season, or basically once a turn. Cruisers, the same way, you can have a total of 3 slipways, I believe. I'd have to check that again. 3 total slipways, but 2 in the spring, 1 in the fall. You can have a command cruiser slipway, a maximum of 1, and then 1 dreadnought slipway and 1 battleship slipway. And we alternate their position in the seasons, because in this game, 1 year is 2 turns. There is a spring season and a fall season. And so basically front half of the year, back half of the year. But each season is a turn. So for example, if you had turn 60, that might be the spring. Turn 61 would be the fall. Turn 62 would be the spring again, and so on and so on as we go. So I feel like I've got a speck of dust on my glasses, because I love my glasses. Just got to take that off for a second, take a quick wipe while I celebrate Photon Fired by Bill Smith. Ooh, ladies and gentlemen. Smitty, thank you for the caffeinated goodness. Let me get in there in just a momento to saturate my... I'm trying to look for another S word. The alliteration is strong today. Can you feel that? There's a lot of good alliteration happening. Perhaps we were off on a good foot with the proper font as provided by Daniel, who is a huge fan of of syllabic. No, I can't even go there. He loves alliteration. Okay, quick celebration of the caffeinated goodness. Quick sip. Yes. All right. As you can see, we are just a little over halfway. 3 of 5 down below. The green bar is working its way towards the edge. Let's continue with our good friends, the Carnivon. All right. Once again, my head is on the wrong side. Let's slide that over. Let's take a look at our friends in green. Our friends in green are the Carnivon, the canine folks of this particular map, and they are number 2 on the economic and arguably military ladder. They are right up there with the Klingons, and until just recently being dethroned, they were the number 1 military faction in the game. All right, let's take a quick slide down the border with the Klingons. And as you can see, as with the Klingons, not a lot of military punch along here. We've got a bunch of YSRs, which are survey exploration ships. Those are doing their thing up in the north in this area. As we slide down, you can see there's a couple of light cruisers, so not a lot of heavy firepower, continuing their exploration along the unexplored dastardly coasts of the Fog of War. Good to note, can't talk. Good to note, you can see here there is Wolfpack 4, along with 2 frigates and a drone bombardment destroyer. Ooh, it's a mouthful. Wolfpack. Where, oh, where are the Carnivon fleets? Wolfpack, here we are. So that is Wolfpack number 4. Quattro. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, can you see it? It's a destroyer with not 1, not 2, but 3 frigates and 2 crippled. So obviously something has happened there recently. I, unfortunately, am not swift enough to be able to follow along, but there are a couple of crippled frigates there, but they are on the border in the area to potentially respond to any bad things. Interesting to note as well, since we're talking about borders, there is no neutral zone between these two folks. See that? I'll just quickly slide over here. We'll get to these guys in a second. Notice the neutral zone? This yellow all the way down the diagonal line, that's a neutral zone. Neutral zone. Border established. There is no neutral zone between these two bad boys. The gray and the green are not bordering with each other, which is interesting because what that means functionally within the homebrew rules that we have, there is no border to cross to initiate war. They are arguably still or capable of establishing war status with each other at any time, but they have to attack each other to make that happen, not just cross a border, you know what I mean? There's no territorial sovereignty delineation here, just sort of like a common agreement or a handshake, but there's no actual established border. Very interesting to note. All right, so as we continue, like we did with the Klingons, we're going to wrap around and we'll do the sickle going from bottom to top, left to right here. So as we look, we've got some, we'll take away the ships real quick so you can see the bases. So you can see, boom, there's a base here. One base being built here. A couple of Romulans and Remans in the corner. Excuse me, that's very interesting. And then, of course, you got some other bases here. But the big thing is the construction of this base as we bring back the ships. So we got a tug building a base. We got a bunch of survey ships. One survey, light cruiser, heavy cruiser, heavy cruiser, heavy cruiser, heavy cruiser, heavy cruiser. They're all doing that cruiser stuff. That search through cruisers, which is apparently been very successful for the Carnivon. What do we have in this area? We have a commercial convoy making its way, I'm going to guess, to this Reman planet with a YDK. Going to establish a trade route is my guess. And once they're done, and this light cruiser just happens to be sitting here on this planet, interesting to note. Notice how, though, that the Remans are unhappy. That's one away from hateful. And while you're unhappy, you can't establish a trade route. So what in the world is happening here? Interesting. Now, I am just curious. I don't see... I brought the ships back, right? I don't see a fleet here. I mean, I've got 2nd Legion here, but I don't see a fleet here. Daniel, qu'est-ce qui arrive? There must be a Reman fleet here. What's going on? Let's take a quick look. I'm going to pull up the minor fleets, minor empires, and slide up to the remans. There's not a lot of remans here. This is AEGYP, Egypt. So if that is the case, I see the Transit Authority, the Teramo territory, what is that word? I can't really see it, unfortunately. There's Solar Fleet, Atlantis Fleet, but I don't see a fleet there. So the question is, I don't recall the Carnarvon having a massive military buildup and attacking these bad boys. But has that occurred? And I'm just not aware. Where's their fleet? Daniel, help me out here. Imperial War Reserve. Yep. Oh, here we go. You were right. The minor fleet is missing on the map. Oops. All right, we'll have to sort that out. All right, I will pull that back. Daniel will fix that in the back end. Okay, so obviously there's a fleet there. I'm imagining it's not insignificant. And away we go. Egypt, which is the, I'll pronounce it Egypt because it's Egypt maybe. So we got 2nd Legion and the Romulans sitting here. And 2nd Legion, let's pull up the minor fleets, minor empire. And we will slide down to 2nd, not 1, but 2 Legion. 2nd Legion, a Y Warbird. 5 Battlehawks total. We have a total of 7 plus 6, 13 YSNs. Those are the frigates. So you got a cruiser, a bunch of destroyers, 5 of them, and then double digit in the frigate faction. And then, of course, here we have 4 planetary ground bases and a YDK, and they are indifferent to our good friends, the Carnarvon. Forgot where you parked it, Julian says. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so interesting to note. Unhappy with the Remans, indifferent with the Romulans. The Remans and the Romulans both have a minor planet. That's a 3 EP grab if you can get it. Interesting to note. What else do we have here? So we got cruisers exploring. We have a drone bombardment cruiser, a tug. Question is, are they providing extended supply or are they going to build a base? Interesting to know. Small exploration freighter doing its thing. Survey ship with prime teams exploring to the southeast. We'll talk about their blue boys to the south and the competitions, shall we say, with regards to exploration. But let's continue with the Carnarvon curve up. So here we have close proximity between the ISC and the Carnarvon. What do we got? We got a survey ship, another survey ship, cruiser, large exploration freighter, a lot of cruisers, command cruiser, small exploration freighter, and a survey ship. So what do we have in this neighborhood? I can't take away ships without taking away the fleet boxes, but I can see we have Wolfpack 2 in the corner here near the Borak. We have Home Fleet, and there's a fleet here, Wolfpack 1. So let's take a quick look. Wolfpack 1, that's the one that's sitting here with the diplomat on the planet they just demolished. Wolfpack 1. So we got 2 drone bombardment destroyers, 2 troop ships, or like commando ships, destroyers, and a total of 7, not a small number, 7 frigates. Okay. But those 7 frigates, in addition to the frigate that's there, it's a total of 8 frigates. Okay, interesting to know. What's Home Fleet? Let's take a look at the Carnarvon Home Fleet. So interesting to note, Home Fleet is 3 cruisers and a dreadnought. Not small, but I mean, in the sense of like 3 cruisers and a dreadnought isn't a small thing, but not life-changing by any means. I mean, it's interesting to note that that's where it's located. Obviously, recently attacking this planet here, which was annexed 3 turns ago. But interesting to note. Interesting to note. Also, interesting to note that the Gorn up in the north here, another minor faction, pardon me for not noticing, they are also Happy Plus with a diplomat on there. Will the Carnarvon convert the Gorn to the Carnarvon faction? Croutons better be good. That's all I have to say. Or maybe it's crickets, because, I mean, they are lizards. On a different note, interesting to note the buildup of military force here versus down here. So Wolfpack 2, you'll notice, which is the fleet in this neck of the woods, is a drone bombardment ship with 4 frigates. Not crazy, but not too much. There is another fleet not too far away. That's Wolfpack 5 which is this bottom one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The bottom one, a destroyer with 5 frigates. Okay, so we got a bunch of frigates sort of in this neck of the woods with some exploration ships, drone bombardment cruiser, a couple cruisers over here. Long story short, it doesn't look like there is a massive military buildup here, and there's not a massive military buildup on the east either, but it's more than the south. Now, that being said, of course, they are much closer to the ISC, and this is a bit of a land grab situation. So how quickly can they grab that land? Well, I guess we'll see here momentarily. They are 1 hex from each other, and I expect that that's going to be an interesting encounter when it occurs. So interesting to note, the Carnarvon, number 2 military force in the game, close and bumping up to the ISC, and of course close to the Borak as well. We'll get to the ISC and the Borak momentarily. Let's slide back to the chat real quick. Oh, yeah. The Borak homeworld is where they... What? The Borak homeworld is where they are. They do have cloak, Bill Smith says. Yeah, Smitty is well known for his rhetoric and propaganda. Let me take a quick sip. Let's restore the chat. Carnarvon, comptroller calculates, conniving, commander's cunning, commandeering of coconuts. Lost Muskrat said, yes, excellent. I love the alliteration. Excellent, mes amis. Mes amis. Thank you. All right, so we're at a baker's dozen for live concurrent viewers. Thank you very much for that. But we are still below the double digits on the thumbs up. If you haven't already hit thumbs up and you are enjoying the caffeinated goodness, the colorful commentary, and perhaps the witty banter, that's subjective, you let me know with a thumbs up. Otherwise, if you like Star Trek and strategy games, why not do it too? It's free. Let me take a quick sip out of this refreshing chalice right here. 4X. New World. Cleansing the palate with H2. Oh, yeah. Okay, Julian says, new rule proposal. When you convert an independent to your faction, you inherit their ships and bases, but they must be converted to enter service. Interesting. That has been, shall we say, a pain point in the past around what do you do with these ships and so on and so forth. Yeah, at this point in the game, I don't think for this campaign, that rule will change. But it's an interesting note for those of our players who are currently watching this broadcast. What do you think about that? Interesting to consider. They're like National Guard ships, for lack of a better way to describe it. Be interesting to see. Okay, so let's discuss real quick the current military buildup of the Carnarvon. So the Carnarvon, being at the top of the map, they essentially only have 2 fronts. They encounter the Klingons on their western border, and as you see, they don't have a neutral zone, but there is a, shall we say, a handshake agreement to not touch each other. No significant military force on that border from either faction. Okay? So if north isn't a border or a boundary, and west isn't one, all they have is east and south. So they are pushing east and south very, very quickly and strongly, and sort of gravitationally are being attracted to their closest neighbors. To the east, that is the ISC, and we'll get to them in a momento. And to the south, that is the Lyrans, the kitty cat, and the Borak. We'll have to see. So we'll talk about them as we go south here in a momento. But what do you think about the Carnarvon and using their cruisers to be able to survey? It's certainly at this point an effective strategy, or it has been for the Carnarvon. There is nothing that I can see, at least initially, that indicates that they are on the warpath to be able to tussle folks. But interesting to note that they have not established any firm borders with anybody. I know that there has been at least one diplomatic discussion with them for border negotiations, and that discussion was, shall we say, postponed, or the can kicked down the road with regards to that. So they're not necessarily interested in firm borders, or so it would seem. So what are they looking to do? And I will return to that in a moment. I would think, Lost Muskrat says that at least the ground bases would remain. Okay. Daniel says maybe that's how the Klingons have so many ships. I don't know about that. All right. Let's slide back to the map. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the boys in yellow. Yeah, that's right. We're not talking about the chickens of the game. No. These are the strong, bold. That's right. Anyone who wears yellow has to be confident. It's like the new pink, one might say. And here we are with the faction in yellow and black. It's not around being cowardice. It's about being a warning. Because boy, do the ISC have bad boy ships, and they can beat down, unload a beat down on whoever decides to tango with them. Let's have a quick discussion about where the ISC are. Now, you've seen the Klingons, you've seen the Carnarvon, and both those factions are quite large, at least when it comes to their footprint. Now, how do you accomplish that? Well, in this game, there's a number of different ways to be able to expand your empire. And one of the ways that's been extremely successful for the Klingons has been building a lot of ships early and getting them out there to explore. However, as was noted by the Borak in the early part of the game, there's only so much money to spend. And in this game, we have a tech tree. And if you've ever played a 4X strategy game, there are folks that go tall and those folks who go wide. And typically the tall folks rely on some degree of investment in advancement or technology or some kind of progression. They overinvest in that to be able to get ahead. And that gives them a distinct advantage when encountering and sort of competing with other factions. And of course, the other factions that go wide don't invest in that. They usually invest in whatever resources they need to be able to expand and broaden their footprint. As you can clearly see with the ISC, they do not have a broad footprint. So what do you think they've been spending their money on? I think it's tech. So at this point in the game, being that it is turn 57, there is a strong probability that the ISC have been overinvesting in technology. Let's take a quick look at what they've got. If we take away the ships real quick, you can look at their base distribution. For the most part, they've got a 2-hex base distribution. Why is that important? Well, as we discussed earlier, those little black diamonds on those counters, you will see them here. Whoop. Those black diamonds indicate special sensors. That gives, for those of you who've played this game, it gives you the ability to do extended reaction. If you don't know anything about extended reaction or just reaction to begin with, there is a tutorial in the playlist below on this channel, so please go check that out. So I won't explain it too much, but long story short, bases can mutually support each other, or at least out to 2 hexes. You have ships that are positioned on those bases. They can react up to 2 hexes out for whatever's going on. And when you have bases 2 hexes apart from each other, they can mutually support each other with ships that are located on those bases. So we can see here very clearly the ISC have invested heavily in that kind of infrastructure. Great. So the only exception to that really has been on their westernmost border. You can see the pattern is like solid, 2 hexes everywhere you look, except for here, right below this blue base. They went 3 hexes out because that is most likely their range of supply, and they are trying to explore out to the Tango line as quickly as possible. I expect, we'll see what happens, they will have a tug or something. Oh, look, built right there. They're going to build a base right there, and they're going to establish the Tango line, most likely, knock on wood, as their border line, or at least that's going to be the proposal, between the Carnarvon and the ISC. So we did note earlier when it came to fleet cap that the ISC have a very small military. I will reiterate that now. As we pull up fleet cap, the ISC have 34 total ships with a 78 total attack factor. 162 defense. You compare that to the Carnarvon, who have nearly 3 times the number of ships and more than double, in fact, almost exactly 2.5 times the offensive firepower collectively of the ISC. Something to note. Now, ISC ships are strong overall, and they, for example, let's just take a look at what's up front here. We got 4th and Judge Fleet. So this will be like their vanguard. Let's take a look. What was it? 4th and Judgment Fleet. Okay, so not a lot going on here, to be fair. Judgment Fleet is a cruiser and a destroyer, and their exploration ship is a crippled destroyer and a survey ship. Okay, now let's just look at the ships real quick. They have 4 attack. Let's look at command cruisers, for example, and their cruisers. Their cruisers are 4 attack factor, 7 defense. The Klingons, by example, are 4 6s. Borak have 4 6s. The Carnarvon have 3 6s. So you have cruisers and command cruisers that are 1 point better in both attack and defense each. Okay. Their destroyers are 3 4s, and I believe we don't have any. I don't see any destroyers right off the top for the Carnarvon, but the Carnarvon have their frigates, which are 2 3s, and I don't see. I believe that the ISC frigates are also 2 3s. Not a big deal. The light cruiser, though, is where the money is for the ISC. This is arguably their best ship in this era. Why? A light cruiser has a 4-5 attack and defense. 4 is the same attack factor as their cruisers, and it has a 5 defense, which is essentially the same, or pretty close to most cruisers, heavy cruisers, in the game, in the Y era. When they're crippled, they go to a 2-3. Which means they are a 2-point repair, and they can be repaired quickly at a YBS. If you look at the YCA, they are a 3-point repair, which is brutal. A 3-point repair, which cannot be repaired at a YBS. A YBS can only repair 2 points of damage. A YDK can repair 8. So it is significantly more difficult to repair the CA versus the CL. The destroyer is also a 2-point shift, but it's a 3-4 versus the 4-5. And I would argue that the 4-5 is the sweet spot for the ISC. Of course, they can build whatever they like, but I think that's the sweet spot. And it's funny because I'm doing this now, and I seem to recall that the YCL in previous games crippled to a 3-4 or a 2-4 because it was a 1-point repair. But it isn't now. Interesting to note. What do you guys think? I feel like it was a 1-point repair at one point in our module, and now I'm showing it anyway as a 2-3. So anyways, ISC ships are tough, and they've also got 5th Fleet on the border there. Let's just take a quick look at 5th Fleet. Here we are. Boom. YSR, YCA, nothing big. So the ISC are currently set up with their base structure for a defensive posture. They're going to build out bases to be able to interact with the Carnarvon early and hopefully establish that border. But as we noted, the Carnarvon have 2.5 times the military firepower and number of ships, 3 times the number of ships as the ISC. So what's that all about? ISC, so Daniel says, ISC YCL has always been a 2-point repair, but several Klingon ships in the M era are 1-point repairs. Yeah, so I was playing the Klingons in the last game where the ISC were big players, so maybe that's where my brain was going. But yeah, so where was I? Right, so the Carnarvon are 2.5 or 3 times as numerous from offensive firepower to number of ships as the ISC. Can the ISC defend well? Well, they have better offensive firepower and defensive capabilities. They just need to build up the repair capacity to be able to quickly repair those ships that get crippled and create a defensive line, like a Maginot line, that can withstand the continuous assault, there we are, of the potential Carnivon. When we look at this map, one of the things I think about, and I'll move my head just so it's a little bit easier maybe to think about, and I will zoom out one. Boop. So when we look at this map and we see the ISC in the top corner, we've got the Borak over there just to my left, and the IS or the Lyrans on the other side. You can see that the Carnivon are on the cusp of encountering ISC and Borak forces. If I'm the Carnivon, there is a strong probability and possibility that the first person I encounter, or at least one of these folks that I encounter, is going to be someone I'm going to test, push, start a conflict with. Why would I do that? Well, in this game, because of the military conflict and the rules around war fatigue, it makes sense in this early part of the game to push one faction early to get a wartime economy, leverage that to be able to build out your military capacity from an infrastructure perspective to the number of ships, making you a harder target. And if you are in an already advantageous position relative to the other power you're fighting, then you can potentially gain some ground, like resources that have already been discovered. It's like a quick, easy EP grab. Okay. So if I'm going to pick one of these factions, who am I going to pick? Well, we'll talk about the Borak and the Lyrans in a second, but the first person I'm going to encounter, at least right now, looks like the ISC. The ISC strategically are placed in a position where there are no other factions bordering them, north or east. So if you're the Carnivon and you were to move straight east and take them out, you're not adding another front with another faction that you have to fight. You've still got the same number of factions below you as you did before, but you get to take out one that's to the side of you. So from a strategic standpoint, that makes sense that you would take out that faction as well. From an economic standpoint, the ISC are smaller than the other neighboring factions. From a military perspective, they are comparable to the Borak in many ways. Slightly larger number of ships, slightly smaller offensive firepower, and we'll go to the Borak here in a second. The question is, which one is the harder target? It's pick your poison, roll the dice, 50-50, I would argue. Which one's the easier target. But from a strategic perspective, it makes more sense to take the corner because, again, you're not adding any more potential opponents. Whereas if you went south, you're just exposing yourself to more fronts, arguably. If you took the Lyrans out, you've got the Kzinti and the Federation and the Borak that become like vectors of attack. If you take out the Borak, you've got the ISC, the Lyrans, and the Federation, and potentially the Hydrants down from below. So anyways, all that to say, out of all the factions that you could possibly fight, from a strategic perspective in the map, it makes sense to take the corner. It's a more easily defended position rather than, for example, diving into the middle of the map, which the folks to the south would be. So something to think about one way or the other. All right, let me slide back because I see some chat going on, and then we will go into, we'll do a 1-2 punch with the Lyrans and the Borak. All right, so we look at the chat. What do we got here? So Daniel did correct me, or at least reinforced my doubt. Not reinforced my doubt. Corrected, satisfied, fixed my doubtful position around the ISC's YCL. So 2-point repair, always been a 2-point repair versus the Klingon 1-point repair for some units. But like I say, the ISC, it's cheaper to build. It's a 2-point repair, can be repaired at YBS's. It's a 4 attack, 5 defense ship. It's probably the best ship of the bunch for the ISC. Their cruisers are really good, and they have a 7 defense factor, but they become a 3-point repair, which is no different than the Klingons or some other factions that have that 6 defense factor, including the Carnarvon. When their ship's crippled, it's also a 3-point repair. Dell says, our ships are quite cheap too. They are on sale. So Dell is playing the Tholians as of right now. And that's the bottom left corner of the map. Not necessarily an option for any of the factions in the middle of the map or the ISC. It is what it is. Bill Smith, Tony is stirring again. Let's you and him fight. Well, I'm just kind of throwing out what's out there. Lost Muskrat. I know, right? Dell says, no, in times like this, we must keep our cool. That's right. Iceman. Don't be Maverick. Be Iceman. Anyway, so yes, I am stirring the pot. Absolutely. But I'm not going to be purely stirring the pot with the ISC. I'm also going to stir the pot with the Lyrans and the Borak. So just you wait. Let's go back to those two factions, speaking of which, and we can talk about how and why the Carnarvon should attack the Borak. Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's go down to the Borak to do a quick assessment of where they're at and why the Carnarvon should or shouldn't attack them and what's going on. Okay, so as you know, as you can see, the Borak, and I'll zoom out because the shape of the Borak is a little sort of interesting here. You've got sort of this weird triangle or like 3-armed amoeba that is forming. You've got one arm that is going up towards the ISC, and as you can see, the ISC and the Borak have established a neutral zone. Excellent. Good diplomatic discussions that are going on. If you look to the south, you can see that the Federation and the Lyrans and the Borak have established a border zone. This is good. As you look on the Lyran side and the Carnarvon side, no borders yet. And we'll talk about that in a momento. But as far as the shape of the Borak Empire and the directions in which it is expanding, you can see that this is essentially the Borak sort of as a natural evolution is moving into the direction of where the neighbors are. It's moving towards the Lyrans and the Carnarvon. It is moving towards the ISC and south towards the Federation. So this is all good in the sense of like, it's a natural evolutionary state trying to make contact and establish borders and so on and so forth. So the ISC border, there's a peaceful border that's been established. There's not a lot of military presence on either side. When we can look at these fleets here, like for example, with the ISC 3rd Fleet, you can see here it's a survey ship with an escort frigate. We've got Justice Fleet, named echelons. So Justice is a cruiser, and Integrity Fleet is, once I can find it here, back to here, command cruiser and destroyer. So long story short, not a lot of military punch in this area, more so on the ISC side than the Borak side for sure. But other than that, just exploration that's happening here. Certainly on the Borak side, we've got a survey ship and 2 exploration freighters. So not a lot of offensive firepower here at all. On the south side, you can see much of the same. Obviously, there's no immediate or imminent contact with the Federation, even though we've established a border, and there's very little ship count down here doing exploration. And really, it's all tugs and exploration ships doing that, which means all the business for the Borak is around here. Let's zoom in and talk about it some more. Okay, so previously, and I'll take away the ships real quick so you can see. So previously, we had the Romulan and the Gorn faction in Greer. So as you can see with the Romulans are happy plus with the Borak. We have a trade route between us, and we're doing well. The Gorn had been not as agreeable, and based on the interaction and sort of, shall we say, the territorial competition that was going on, we moved to be able to test a strategy or a tactic when it comes to using ground assault to be able to attack this target, and we were able to take it. Also, just to be able to like test things out from a combat perspective and see how that went. And obviously it went reasonably well because we took the planet. The ships from the fleet that took the planet, as we bring them back, were in White Dragon, and then we scattered them to be able to explore as best as possible. And as you can see, we're sort of emulating the same strategy that the Carnarvon were using when they were exploring with all their warships and their cruisers. As has been previously discussed, the Borak destroyers and frigates suck. Like, they are just horrible. So the ship that's being built the most are cruiser hull ships. So we've got command cruisers, lots of them, cruisers, lots of them, tugs, fair number of them, and survey ships. So these are all cruiser-based hulls, and long story short, they're expensive, but there's a limit on how many you can build per turn, populating them as quickly as we can. So you can see there's quite a collection of cruisers doing their exploration business, and they are pushing up towards the Carnarvon bit of territory. You can see that there is a comparable, well, maybe not a comparable, but there is a similar effort from the Carnarvon with regards to exploration with cruisers. And so these two folks are going to bump into each other real soon here. Like, we're only 2 hexes away, essentially, rather than the 1 hex for the ISC. So 2 hexes away, and it's easy, like it's an easy interaction there. The question will be, when we do interact, what is going to be the response? Now, there's been some diplomatic discussion already between the Borak and the Carnarvon. No established border as of yet. But the question will become, what will happen when our ships literally bump into each other? Because, for example, we can see that there is a Carnarvon ship in Lima Lima 12. It is reasonable to assume that there will be Borak ships sort of in this area here between Juliet 14 and Lima Lima 13. And so we're going to be within a hex of each other. So what are we going to do? We'll have to see how that evolves and what's going to happen. And who knows? To reiterate or sort of further explore what we were talking about with the ISC, let's look at the distribution of Carnarvon ships and where they could attack. So if I'm the Carnarvon and I want to potentially attack the ISC, there's not a ton of ships here, but there's more ships on the Carnarvon side. As far as like, where are their ships located? They've got more ships up here, which would tend to project that they are more prepared to potentially attack from this way. There are fewer ships down this way, and they could attack the Borak, certainly. If I'm the Carnarvon, I got to pick one or the other. If I were to pick, we've already talked about the IC, so let's say, what if I pick the Borak? Well, let's take away the ships real quick and focus on the density of resources in this area. Without a doubt, there is a concentration of planets, colonies, and resources in this little pocket that is more accessible to the Carnarvon and more potentially rewarding for the Carnarvon than anything that's up here with the ISC. I mean, there's like 5 resources up there, and there's a ton, relatively speaking, here. So from a reward perspective, it makes sense to attack the Borak. There's more stuff to grab. From a risk perspective, the Borak have a lot of ships in this area. In fact, they've front-loaded basically their entire fleet into this area, which means out of the 31 ships that they have total, 3/4 of them or more, maybe 4/5, are all in this neck of the woods. Also, the disposition of those ships is they're predominantly all cruisers with like some tugs and things. So like they're all cruisers, which means they're hard targets to take. And the cruiser for the Borak is a 4/6 relative to the 3/6 of the Carnarvon. That being said, the Carnarvon do have drone bombardment ships, so that can become a factor in the fight. The question will be, where is the drone tech for the Carnarvons? Can they use those drones against mobile or like ships moving around versus stationary targets like bases? If they can't hit mobile ships, it's going to be a more challenging encounter for sure. Also an interesting note here, notice the capture tag on the YVUL. As mentioned before, the Borak are a commercial, trade-focused organization. It's all about growth and the art of the deal. So the Borak have engaged with this particular Romulan faction in a business transaction, and we have purchased a YVUL. Now we got some, we have to change the coat of paint and make it look all snazzy and blue, but we bought ourselves arguably one of the best dreadnoughts in the game. When you look at, if we go down south here, you can see that somewhere here, maybe I can more easily find it. So the YDN for the ISC is a 7.9. The YDN for the Romulans is a 7.8. I would argue the ISC's DN is the best in the game. The Vulture is pretty close. It's a 7.8, and it can cloak. I think I'm going to lose that cloaking ability once I convert it. But I know that I will. But a 7-8 is still a pretty good ship. Compare that to the Carnarvon, which is our closest competition here. In home fleet, where are we here? Carnarvon home fleet. Carnarvon home fleet, their DN is a 5-8. So you're looking at a ship that is 2 points offensively better than their best ship for the Carnarvon. I don't even have a DN that I can build yet. So the fact that the Borak were able to buy that ship is phenomenal. And of course, with a Dreadnought in the mix, it allows us just one more ship on the battle line and allows a lot of offensive firepower for the Borak fleet. Because if you think about it, so the command factor for a Dreadnought is 10, which basically, and it can command 10 ships above and beyond itself. So if you had an entire fleet of cruisers, which are 4-6s, and you had the VUL, the Vulture, as the command ship, so you've got 7 attack plus 10 4-6 ships. So that's 47 attack. And in the Y era, that's a lot of firepower. By contrast, if we were to use the Carnarvon, let's assume they have a Dreadnought in the mix. So that's a 5. Plus they have, let's just assume it was all cruisers as well. They'll have 30 attack, 35 attack to 47 if it was the same, tit for tat. Same defense factors, but just way more firepower on the Borak side than the Carnarvon side. And we know that, for example, they don't have that kind of mix. They might add some drone bombardment ships, but then that compromises their defense factor with a little bit more offensive firepower, this, that, and the other thing. That being said, though, and this is really important to note, the Carnarvon have the Heel Nipper, and the Heel Nipper is a phenomenal weapon. If the battle intensity is high enough, they can unbelievably beat the snot out of you and do some really big damage. That being said, though, if you only have cruisers and your battle intensity is high enough, it doesn't really make a difference. Direct damage 1-for-1 is no different than resolving damage 1-for-1. And if they're all the same ship regardless, interesting to note. I don't know that the Heel Nipper would have an advantage in that kind of dynamic. We'll have to see. Let me wet my whistle and shift focus from a Carnarvon conflict to a Lyran conflict. Okay, because these are the problems the Borak have. The Borak have until last turn, arguably one of the biggest militaries rolling in on their northern border, which is the Carnarvon. That is an unbelievable tsunami of sour grapes coming our way. Not something the Borak are looking forward to. So that's coming our way. But on the same side, we've got a temperamental kitty cat on the left. So we got the Lyrans here, right? So the Lyrans have an interesting dynamic because they are threatened on all fronts. Like, they've got Carnarvon and Klingons coming in from the north. They have the Kzinti and the Federation coming in from the south, although they've established a border with the Feds, so that looks peaceful. And of course, the Borak from the east. Now, the Borak are the closest right now because they are literally like one hex, arguably, away from their explored space. But if we look at, let's pull up the supply menu for the Lyrans, and we are going to set supply at 3. Look at the supply reach that the Lyrans have. They don't have reach beyond this Romulan planet. Now, we've been having interaction with the Lyrans as far as diplomatic stuff and trying to sort out what a border would look like. Let's just say that those discussions are ongoing. And it is common for players in this game to have a sense of what they are, purely from a defensive perspective, what they're entitled to, in the sense of, this is my territory, this is my stuff, and I don't want you inside my bubble, or whatever it is. In previous games, that was determined by a certain number of hexes out from a capital, because, for example, when you get to M or GW tech and you can move 6 hexes in a turn, you want to make sure that your opponent is at least 6 hexes away from your capital, so they can't just start, assaulting your capital willy-nilly. So you wanted at least that 6 hexes out. And so that became like a default minimum distance bubble that people would just stay away from me. Now, as as the games evolve and you expand and explore, that perception from players as to what their footprint should be or what they have control over or whatever it is, that morphs and changes and so on. And of course, when you come into contact with another player, they have their own biases and ideas and perspectives of where their borders are. And so you're competing about what I think I should have and what you think you should have, and so on and so forth. Interesting to note, this was probably the interaction that happened between the Klingons and the Carnarvon, and they came to an agreement without a border, like without a neutral zone. So interesting to note there, right? As you can see here, this is the influence of the Lyrans. And let's, just for S&Gs, let's just pull up the borax supply. So notice how nicely it bumps up against the Lyrans, right? Like it's really close. Now, the borax are going to build a base right here that's happening this turn. So that's going to go out another 3. And I'll just, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to show you what it looks like if I put a base there, just for S&Gs. Let's see here. Bases. Support units and bases. There's bases. There's got to be Y era bases. Come on now. Y era. Support. Bases. Here we go. All right. So this is just for S&Gs, and I'm just going to put it here. Boom. So this is the range of supply that's going to be established by the borax. And as you can see, there's an overlap sort of like in this area here. So this would be a logical area for the Lyrans and the borax to sort of come to terms as to, you know, we're going to, this is the border area, right? This is how we're going to manage this. But that's sort of like how that looks and what that, how that's sort of evolving. The Lyrans, by example, don't have anything quite in that neck of the woods. And interestingly, for these two factions, the Lyrans and the borax, you have this buffer of these 3 factions. 2 Romulan planets, which are actually one. I'll get rid of the. Here, let me. I will get rid of the supply, so it makes it a little bit easier to see. Get rid of the borax supply, and we will get rid of the Lyran. So you've got this, there's a neutral zone around these 2 planets. These 2 Romulan planets are one mega large minor faction. They're big. And they've got a lot of ships. So they've got like YDK, 8 planetary ground bases and home fleet, and I'll show you that in a second. And then they have 4 planetary ground bases and a YBS. So they're a hard target. And then you got the Gorn here, who also 4 planetary ground bases, YBS, and 4th fleet. So let's pull up those fleets real quick, and you can see how much of a hard target they are. Home fleet, which is this one here, Vulture. Again, we just talked about the Vulture as being a good dreadnought. We've got 2 Warbirds, which is their cruiser, a Falcon, which is a Mauler. The Mauler being, it can do directed damage 1-to-1. It's a very powerful ship. 4 destroyers and a total of 8 frigates. So that's just home fleet. And then there's First Legion, which is right next door, also with a Warbird, 3 destroyers, 3 frigates, and a convoy. So collectively, they have these 2 planets have a dreadnought, 3 cruisers, 7 destroyers, 11 frigates, and a Falcon, and all those planetary ground bases in the YDK and the YBS. That's just a really hard target, especially for, shall we say, struggling militaries like the borax and the Lyrans. So they're not going to be able to just roll in there and take them out. The Gorn have 4th fleet. And 4th fleet, you can see here's a command cruiser, light cruiser, 4 destroyers, 6 frigates, and they have a YBS. I have a feeling, based on the fact that they're banking money, they're going to upgrade that YBS into a YDK ASAP, and we'll see what happens. But, you've got the military of the Lyran. It's really distributed, with the exception of, and here's where this gets exciting, home fleet. So if I take away the ships real quick, you will see that this is getting upgraded to a YDK, and there is a YDK getting upgraded over here. So there's a YDK there, but again, only 3 hex supply, right? 1, 2, 3. So that doesn't go very far. But if they've got a YDK, and then they've got home fleet, and I'll show you home fleet here in a second. Home fleet's not small. Home fleet is a dreadnought, and they have a 6-8 dreadnought. They have a total of 5 cruisers, and they have 3 6 cruisers, but still cruisers, heavy cruisers. They have 5 light cruisers, a ton of these good dreadnoughts, like 2-4 dreadnoughts are pretty good, 9 of them, and then a frigate. This is not a small fleet, especially for the Lyrans, and it would seem as though those Lyrans are definitely gearing up for something. What are they gearing up for? Are they going to attack the Borak? It doesn't look like they're building a base to do that. But are they going to attack the Borak? Maybe. But I think they're going to attack the Romulans. Why? This guy right here. This troop ship is slow moving. It has 4 ground attack factors, and it's the thing that's going to ground assault this base. 8 planetary ground bases, 4 G units, wide. It's without a doubt that's what's going to happen there, or at least that's my prediction. And when we look at, so the Borak haven't made contact with these Romulans, so these planetary attitudes are purely about what's interacting with the Lyrans. And noting that there is a difference. Like one faction can be on good relations with them and another faction can have bad relations with them. That's tracked by the GM. But as of right now, they are unhappy with the Lyrans, meaning they can't establish trade. And this other planet is indifferent. Interesting to note, the Gorn are also indifferent. If we take away the bases and the planets, why are the Lyrans interested in assaulting this? Well, it's a medium planet. That's a 4 EP economy. And when crippled, or like when they they annex it, it'll provide them 2 EP. So from a EP perspective, it's a catch. It's a good thing to get. It's going to be a doozy. Yeah. So the Lyrans are gearing up to be able to take this, and probably if they do take it, it gives them ground or status or standing to be able to say, this is the line, don't cross the line. Because of Borak, by example, are predominantly, especially with the Romulans, as you've seen with our purchase of that Vulture, the Borak are all about trade, all about relationships, all about establishing this good connection. And, we've clearly communicated to the Lyrans and the Carnarvon, respectively. If we go, let's scoop that up. The Romulan, there's a Romulan planet right up here with a YDK. It is our intention, as clearly communicated to the Carnarvon, to be able to establish trade with those Romulans, as it is as well to establish trade with these Romulans. So the Romulans are a good trading partner for the Borak, and we want to keep doing that. That is our motivation. The Lyrans, understandably, don't want that to happen, or at least they don't want that to happen. Whether that's understandable or not is for you to decide. And so it would seem like, based on the troop ship and the other ships that are coming into that area, and look at these destroyers making their way there too, it seems like they're gearing up for an assault on the Romulan homeworld within a couple turns. Like 1, 2, 3 turns max. So that's going to be interesting. Very, very interesting. How's that going to affect everybody? We'll see. Will that be like the line in the sand and the Lyrans and the Borak are like, ooh, okay. Or the Borak are like, hands off, okay. We're not going to go any further. We're copacetic. Let's go. Maybe that's what happens. We'll see. So from the Borak perspective, we've got the Carnarvons cascading from the north. We've got the Lyrans laboring to the east. And we're trying to position ourselves in a way to be able to work well with both. For the Borak perspective, the cruisers where they are is a deterrent from anyone to attack us, because the harder we are as a target, the less incentive you have, or we're increasing the cost of you trying to take us. Because as I mentioned before, that little pocket, there's a lot of resources in that pocket. So the potential reward is higher than perhaps other places, but we're going to increase the cost of you coming in by front loading all our military units there to be able to protect it. So if you're going to attack us, it's going to be costly for you. The question is the cost worth the reward? Maybe. So that's that piece. Then from the Carnarvon coming in and the Lyrans going east, and then of course from the Borak perspective, providing that deterrent and then trying to establish trade and these trade routes between these different factions, these Romulan minor factions, and then, of course, the player factions as well. The only reason, by the way, that we haven't front-loaded the discussion around let's establish trade with the player factions first is because they don't have YDKs within a reasonable distance. For example, if we look at the Carnarvon border, where is the closest YDK? Because I have to send my commercial convoy to a starbase or a YDK or their capital system. Well, it's all the way over here. It's going to take forever for a 1 hex a turn ship to get there. Forever. From the Lyran perspective, they're building this YDK here. That's great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 turns away. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. If I build a YDK, well, I got the YDK here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 hexes away. Add 3 more to be able to get to the Lyrans. So once they establish this YDK, I can send another one to establish there. And each trade route is the same, regardless of whether it's a player faction or a non-player faction. You still only get half an EP per trade route. So it is what it is. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But that's sort of like the nature of the negotiations and what's going on from the Borak perspective. All right, that was a lot, and we'll jump back and dive a little bit more into the Lyrans. Actually, you know what? We'll do it right now, and then I'll run back to the chat, and then we can talk about the other factions in the southern part of the game. Okay, let's do this quickly. We talked about the Lyrans in the sense of their territorial discussions with the Borak. You can see that, for example, they seem to be having good interactions with the Federation. We've established a border. We've got a Federation ship making its way back towards the Federation. We got lots of exploration ships and a tug, probably going to build a base down here. All good stuff. Everything is copacetic. We do have the Kzinti working their way north. Now, they were slightly distracted with a conflict with the Federation. We'll get to that shortly. But they are getting close, as close as the Klingons are, to the Lyrans. And the Lyrans don't really have much in this sort of neck of the woods. Again, if we take away ships, look at the base distribution. We have 1, 2 YBSs, and that's pretty much it, other than some colonies. So the Lyrans have to start investing in some bases to be able to build out and buffer and support their borders relative to some of these other factions. Like the Kzinti have a YDK down there. So that's an interesting thing. We bring back the ships, so we can see predominantly exploration all on the edges. You see Y and WSRs. Exploration, small exploration freighters. On the west coast, we got Apex Fleet. Let's just take a quick look at Apex Fleet. Maybe there's something exciting happening there. Where is Apex Fleet? Foremost Dutch. There we go. Apex Fleet. Okay, so Apex has a cruiser, light cruiser, destroyer. Nothing too crazy, but I think they were reacting to a threat from a raider that was in that area recently. So again, not a lot of military distribution on the borders right now. It's all pretty much focused on home fleet, and of course these destroyers coming in to be able to launch the assault on, theoretically, the Romulans. It could not be the Romulans. Maybe, I mean, they are unhappy with the Lyrans, so maybe that's the motivation there. But there's also the possibility that there could be a pre-positioning to be able to defend against a potential attack from the Borak if they think that the Borak are going to attack. Or maybe, as I think it is, it's just they're positioning those there to be able to attack the Romulans, to do the land grab as a way of having standing to say, back off. And I think that's what it is. Because, to be fair, the Borak have been very diplomatic in all their interactions with all the different folks. We're not the Klingons from the last game. You know what I mean? All right. So, as we scroll up here, what can we see? We can see that the Klingons, and we did this when we kind of did the crescent with the Klingons are coming in hard. They are exploring and expanding their borders quickly. And because they have so many ships and lots of survey ships, they are doing it fast. Take away the ships real quick, and they are building bases to facilitate getting down south as quickly as possible. They're closing the distance between the Lyran border and their border. 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes is only that's the gap between them. And it's as you can see here, there's a tug. They're going to build a base. And if they can build a base and have force supply, and they'll probably have force supply soon if they don't already have it, they'll be able to reach out and touch the Lyrans. They're also going to be really pushing hard to get behind the Lyrans, between them and the edge of the map, because they want to come down here and cut them off. Or at least that's what I would do if I were them. So they're going to push down as quickly as possible, and the Lyrans need to be cognizant of that. So what do we say here? The Lyrans are in a really tough spot. They are a middle economy or even a lower economy faction. As we looked at the graph, they are in the lower tier of economies. Basically, everybody below the Borak are lower tier economies. The Borak and below, like 5 and below. We're below average. And because of that, the Lyrans don't have a lot of resources to be able to compete with all the factions around them, because they are positioned in a disadvantaged position. They are positioned in essentially the middle of the map, like the Borak and the Kzinti and the Feds, but they are bordered now and are looking to have neighbors from the Borak, the Federation, the Kzinti, the Klingons, and the Carnarvon. And out of those 5 factions, 2 of them are the biggest economies and militaries in the game, the Carnarvon and the Klingons, and they're pushing south towards their borders quickly. So for the Lyrans, what is their focus? Do they want to push out their borders quickly and land grab and get that as quickly as possible to get the EP and buffer against these other factions that are pushing in? Maybe. Do they want to just use a military to be able to land grab minor factions? That seems to be what they're doing now. How is that going to work? Because they are going to deal with some very hard choices in the future, depending on who they ally with or don't ally with. If they ally with, for example, they are overly threatened by Carnarvon and Klingons, because those are the big militaries in the game, right? And they decide to ally with Borak and Federation and Kzinti. Great. The Kzinti have indicated they're sort of like on the warpath for the Lyrans, so maybe not the Kzinti. But then they've got to defend against all those factions. They've got to prepare for potential Kzinti invasion. Seems like the Federation are playing nice. Borak are trying to play nice. We'll see how that works out. The Klingons are expansionistic, so how is that going to work? And the Carnarvon are coming south. The Carnarvon are likely to be distracted by the ISC and the Borak, so they've got some time. The Lyrans have some time. But they are certainly going to be dealing with the impending border tensions between the Kzinti, who are also only 4 hexes away, and the Klingons, who are also 4 hexes away and are coming in fast and hard. Choices that the Lyrans have to make. How are they going to manage this going forward? How are they going to deal with diplomatic discussions and peace treaties and so on, and war? That is the dilemma and the decision that they have to make. How are they going to manage that? Who are they going to fight? And how are they going to resolve this issue? All right. With that said, let's slide back to the chat and talk about it. Ooh, yeah. Okay. Smitty, not much is going on here from the chat, guys. You say, Smitty, like the last thing he said, he is stirring the pot. Got it. Lost Muskrat said, he just doesn't want me to test the Borak. So Lost Muskrat, which one are you playing? I'm curious. Let me just take a look here. Lost Muskrat is playing the Carnarvon, right? Here we are. So Lost Muskrat is the Carnarvon player. So what does the Carnarvon want to do? Daniel Easton said, diplomacy is the key to survival in a 4X game. It can make a small country very survivable. So Lost Muskrat is the Carnarvon. And I don't want the Carnarvon coming in and testing the Borak. Why would I want that? As I mentioned before, the Borak are all about trade and expansion. We're not a militaristic force, or at least not a militaristic approach to the game. Because I'm not in a position to be in a militaristic standing in the game, because my economy hasn't been big enough for me to be there, unlike the Carnarvon and the Klingons. And from a military perspective, I've got one of the smallest militaries in the game. Granted, almost the same size as the ISC, but like small military, relatively speaking. But this raises an interesting question. Let's assume for a second our friend, Lost Muskrat, is a warmongering barbarian, and that he does exactly what I was saying they should do. And he wants to take out one of the first factions that he encounters in the game. Let's assume for a second, if you follow my logic, that he decides to go after the ISC because of the strategic positioning on the map. Let's assume that, just for argument's sake. If the Borak do nothing, if the Klingons do nothing, if the Lyrans do nothing, and we just sit there and we watch him roll the ISC, what happens? Well, the ISC have, an economy of, what are we at here? 56. So let's assume 56 gets added onto the Carnivon. That puts them in the 130 range. Maybe 140. So they get something like 140 economy. And even though the Klingons are expanding very fast, that's substantially more than the Klingons. And they're the biggest economy in the game. From a military perspective, they're able to build, obviously, more ships. They're going to be at war status for a prolonged period of time. They'll be in a fight, obviously, but they'll have strong military power. They will be strategically positioned in a very advantageous way. And factions like the Borak and the Lyrans, who are smaller, will be at a severe disadvantage relative to the Carnivon. If the Carnivon have demonstrated this aggressive strategy for success, or successfully, then what is the deterrent for them to not continue attacking other factions? Yeah, there's like war turns and war fatigue and all that kind of stuff, and they got to recover from that. But once they're recovered, what prevents them from continuing to attack the Borak, the Lyrans, or even the Klingons? Nothing. There's no, assuming that they roll them relatively quickly because of an overwhelming, again, like 2.5 times the number of ships and similarly attack factors. If they roll in and take the ISC, there's nothing stopping them from doing the same to the Borak, or at least taking a big chunk of the Borak. Maybe depending on how close they get to the Lyrans, based on the end of that conflict, maybe they do the same thing on the Lyrans or the Klingons, because they want to position themselves as the king of the hill. So, assuming that's the case, just assume for a thought experiment perspective, the Carnivon go on the warpath and start beating on everybody. What do? Well, you prevent that from happening. The Carnivon are extremely strong right now. But as strong as they are not stronger than the ISC and the Borak combined. Well, actually, you could say that they are, because if the ISC only have 34 ships and the Borak have 31 ships, that's only 65 ships, and the Carnivon have over 80. And their attack factors are better. But if you're fighting a two-front war, how's that going to work out? Keeping in mind that the Borak and the ISC, because of our limitations around production, the Borak and the ISC can outproduce any one faction collectively. So two factions together can outproduce the Carnivon. And if they're able to work together, the ISC and the Borak, and maybe we include the Lyrans on that. The Lyrans, maybe it's the Lyrans and the Borak that work together against the Carnivon. The Lyrans and the Borak and the ISC against the Carnivon. At the end of the day, the smaller fish in this pond are going to get gobbled up by the bigger fish if the smaller fish don't work together. If the bigger fish bully themselves around the pond and don't face collective opposition, they'll just roll through everybody. This is like the whole strategy behind Russia, NATO, all that stuff. Like collective defense agreements and all that stuff exist to be able to make smaller factions stronger and harder targets to take, because the collective acts against the single antagonist. So, Lost Muskrat throws out that he doesn't want me to test the Borak. Maybe if you do test the Borak, that'll be the catalyst that brings the ISC and the Borak together, and with the Lyrans, and we collectively respond. Maybe we're able to get the Klingons on board, and the Klingons come in that undefended, undetermined border. The Klingons don't have anybody on their north or western border, or even to their south right now. The only border they have is with the Carnarvon. These are ideas, just thought experiments. So anyways, things to think about. What could happen if? I'm of the opinion, because the Borak are a trade-focused organization, economic growth, scientific advancement, that's the persona, the character that we've established with the Borak. That's our objective. That's our goal. Is that what we're going to accomplish? It depends on what we encounter. As was discussed earlier, the Borak started off with this sort of like overinvestment in tech, encountered a bunch of those all these raiders show up out of nowhere, and the space sharks and all that other crap. And so I had to like shift focus to build military units to try and defend against the random events that were coming my way. And as a result of that, we've established a not insignificant military, but certainly not competitive against the Carnarvon. But we've established a military that is a strong enough deterrent to be able to hold back, especially raiders. So, food for thought. Think what's going on. Julian Kate says, the Lyrans are going tall, investing in tech? Question mark. I don't know. Maybe they are going tall and are investing in tech. The problem is, or the challenge is, the Lyrans they have a very similar footprint and military and size military as the Borak and the IC and a lot of the other factions that I'm sure are balancing things out. The question is, how is that going to compete against factions like the Klingons and the Carnarvon, who are just so much further ahead economically than everybody else? They have enough money to build as many ships as they want per turn and invest in tech. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this all sort of works out. Who knows? All right. So let's talk about the other the other 5 factions in the game. We're going to start down south, and we're going to work towards the center, and we're going to roll with the boys in red, which are the Tholians. Here we go. All right. Okay, so here you can see the wonderful map. We've got the Juliet wormhole on the edge of Tholian space, the big red faction. Not so big, but that's not their fault. So big red faction, continuing to explore, and what have they got? They've got 2 big wormholes here, Juliet and Echo. If we roll up to the Juliet wormhole, you will see that it is where the Klingons are coming through. They have an exploration freighter, 2 destroyers, and a tug on the other side of this wormhole. Now, they sent an E1T through, crippled along the way, which is the indication that that's where their tech is. So they don't have the technology to go through wormholes as of yet, maybe, and not be crippled. So they sent that E1T through. It got crippled, and there's been some discussion from a Tholian front about what they may or may not do. You can see that the Tholians are continuing to explore rapido around the neighborhood. Certainly pushing up towards the Kzinti. Interesting that the Kzinti and the Tholians have established a border so quickly, even though there's quite a bit of space in between them. Noting this hockey stick. What is this? Is this about keeping the Tholians, giving them a channel to get up to the Klingons? Maybe. That's a very interesting thing to negotiate, is this sort of channel up the side. I'll be very interested to see. I mean, certainly the Tholians are concerned that they're going to bump up against the other red faction, the Precarious, and they won't be able to go anywhere. But it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. Very, very interesting. Okay. So if we take away the ships real quick, what do we got for bases? We've got a YDK in the north, a couple of YBSs exploring to the east, but really their base infrastructure is not very strong. The number of ships they have isn't very large. So going back to Julian's question, maybe they're going tall. Maybe they are over-investing in tech, or at least that's where they started, and that's why they are a smaller footprint and have fewer bases and all those things built. If that's the case, I can get behind that. We'll have to see. Dell says, the best ones. They are rock-hard geezers. Okay, well, Dell is playing the Tholians, so here we go. So, yeah, the Tholians are doing great, expanding those borders and moving out. Now, the other red faction, who is right on their border, is the Precarious faction. So let's take away their ships real quick. Look at this base distribution. Like, it is religiously every 2 hexes. Bam, Bam, bam. And look at this. This is their capital. 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes out. They build a YDK. 1, 2, 3, 4 build YDK. 4 YDK. They are creating a systemic like infrastructure of defense. Very, very interesting. Now, I'll bring back the ships real quick. Interesting to note with the Peravians, when we looked at fleet cap, if you recall, and I'll pop it up again, the Peravians only have 18 ship equivalents. 18. That's smaller than even the Borak. And the Borak are tiny. So they only have 18 ships. What's going on? They've got an attack factor of 62. Small. What is going on? You want to talk about a faction that's going tall? That's a faction that's going tall. And when they get to MTech, watch out. They are going to have some big, bad, vicious ships they're going to do some damage with for sure. Watch out. Okay. Not much to say about the Peravian faction. They don't have a lot of ships rolling around. They don't have, but they do have a lot of bases. Interesting to note the DN. Look at this. They have a YDN floating around there with a bunch of cruisers. So interesting to see the dreadnought out in circulation. If we take away the ships and the bases real quick, you can see they've got a couple minor factions. They got a Riemann planet up here that is very happy with them. You've got a Vudar planet, Isotope, that is friendly with them. And it looks like they might have had another faction that they might have, in a friendly way, brought on board. Oh, and there's another Riemann faction over here, which looks like it's hateful. So we've got a happy plus, a friendly, and a hateful faction. Interesting. Okay, bring back bases. The happy plus factions don't seem to be overly large from a military perspective. The ones, Solar Fleet. Let's take a quick look at Solar Fleet. Minor faction, Solar Fleet. Solar Fleet is a dreadnought, command cruiser, 3 F4 pluses, which are destroyers, 6 frigates, and a convoy. So that's not a small fleet, and especially when you consider the size of the Peravian fleet itself. Look at the Peravian fleet. Peravian Eagle Fleet. Eagle Fleet. They've got 2 CAs and 4 frigates ready to roll in on Solar Fleet. I don't know that that's going to be enough. Interesting. One big advantage of the Peravians, by the way, is what we commonly or affectionately refer to as their battle tugs. They have tugs in the Y era that are exactly the same as their cruisers. 4, 6 ships. Incredibly potent, very competent, and for all intents and purposes, no different than a cruiser, except they can also do all the tug stuff. They carry 2 pods versus maybe 1, and they have some potent abilities. So I think the Peravians are going to be a good faction, interesting faction to watch as we evolve this game going forward. Now let's slide my head to the other side, because we're going to talk about the boys in green. Making money. Here we are. So this is the Hydran faction on the edge. Interesting to note what the Hydrans are doing here. Just look at those white boxes. Those are all their fleet boxes. Their fleet boxes are, for all intents and purposes, exploration fleets. Just squint your eyes a little bit and look at that map. What are they doing? No, probably not much different than everybody else. They're pushing out to the edges. Argon, Platinum, Expeditionary, 3rd, Iridium, 5th, Xenon, Zinc. All these guys pushing hard to the west. Tungsten, Cobalt, Nickel, 1st, Iron, Neon, 2nd, Gold, all pushing hard to the north. Why are we doing that? Let's zoom out real quick and you'll see. There is this big open space here between the Federation and the edge of the map. They were working hard to get towards the Kzinti early on, and so they pushed in and they got that connection. But what they did as a result, what they sort of, the cost of that was this big gap, which you could fit a whole empire in here. You could fit the Tholians in here. There's a whole big space there. So the Hydrans, if I'm the Hydrans, are going to push hard to the north to try and get in here as much as they can. Of course, at the same time, they're pushing hard west to be able to grab territory before the Peravians grab it too. Peravians are very evenly split as far as like they got a very even blob sort of expansion, versus the Tholians are very tall. The Khazinti certainly very tall, but the Hydrons are moving out in sort of like in a conal fashion. You can see the north is like the edge of that 45 cone, and Iridium here at the bottom is the left edge of that 45 cone. They're very much going out in that way to make contact with the Peravians, Federation, and try and scoot past the Feds early on. If we zoom in here, what can we see? Let's take away their ships so we can just take a look at their base distribution. Interesting, you can learn a lot by the base distribution. So early on, we had 2 hexes because that was their supply. Then they go to 3 hexes, and as they're moving closer, interesting, 2 hex distribution, sort of like in a weird arm here, and then 3. And I bet you this will be another 3. But they're gonna push out hard towards the Peravians. It'll be interesting to see if the Hydrons maintain a 3 hex spacing for their bases, and then they encounter the Peravians, and the Peravians are using 2 hex spacing on their bases, and they encounter the Hydrons. What's that encounter going to look like? Peravians right now don't have a lot of ships, but the Hydrons, they're not huge. They're not like the Klingons or the Carnivon, but the Hydrons do have 54 ships to the 16 of the Peravians. They have over 100 attack factors versus the 60 of the Peravians. So, granted, lots of turns before they actually make contact, but what's that going to look like in the Y area when they make contact? Or will it be the Y area when they make contact? Because when they go to M era, the Hydrons get early fighters, and that's going to be very interesting challenge for any faction. The Hydrons become quite overpowered, arguably, in the M era. It'll be interesting to see how that balances out. Okay, so the Hydrons are pushing out to the west and going hard to the north. You can see they got a YDK here in the north, and I imagine they're going to keep pushing to the north. You got a Tug pre-positioned, ready to build their next base at the 3 hex spacing. So they're going to keep pushing as far north as they can get. Now, speaking of the folks that they're trying to pass, we got the Federation here. So let's look at the Federation. Federation, interesting dynamic. So the player, just for context, we had to swap out the player for the Federation. The player who was currently playing the Federation decided to take a step back. No problem. We had another player step in. So another player has just taken over the Federation and is sort of managing that process, getting up to speed. There was an initial conflict between the Khazinti, look at this, DN, CC, bunch of drone bombardment frigates, command cruisers. Wow, there's so much crap here. Crap is in like stuff. Home fleet. Let's look at Khazinti home fleet. Boom. So, oh man. So we got 2 dreadnoughts in this vicinity. You've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Stop. 7, 8 command cruisers, and their command cruisers are 4.6. That's pretty decent. A boat ton of frigates and drone bombardment frigates, which are interesting. So, anyways, they got a lot of ships. Federation also task force CostNet in this area. Let's take a quick look at Federation task force CostNet. Not quite the same. 2 frigates, a light cruiser, and a couple crippled frigates. We've got anything else there? No. Interesting. Okay. What do we got? Home, 6th and 8th. Home fleet. Oh, there we go. Home fleet has the converted ISC Dreadnought command cruiser, Vulcan cruiser, which brings scout functions or EW to the game, 6 light cruisers, 6 frigates, and a bunch of prime teams. Then we got 6th and 8th fleet. So Federation 6th fleet, that's a exploration fleet, and Federation 8th fleet, probably another exploration fleet. Yeah, so those aren't really significant. Those are just exploration fleets. Task Force Stalker. Task Force Stalker is another converted ISC cruiser with a couple light cruisers. Long story short, those fleets are not going to be enough to stop the Kzinti. And if the Kzinti have a lower economy than the Federation, they go first. So it would seem as though that if I'm the Kzinti, I want to do this. If I'm the Kzinti, I'm moving this massive fleet to this base in Charlie 42, and I am destroying the YDK, the YBS, and the fleet that's there, because that is the supply that allows them to get to and touch my territory. Interesting. So the Federation is obviously moving hard assets to the west, or at least they were. We'll see how that sort of evolves going forward. You can see that in the north of Federation space, we've got these raiders. So you've got two groups of raiders that are in the area. One is hugging this wormhole, the Audi gravity well, that inverted from Lyran space, if you recall. We've got Wadib in the top here, a Happy Plus Gorn faction being diplomatically swooned by the Federation. We'll see how quickly they come over. You've got Expeditionary Fleet, Second Fleet, Third Fleet, a bunch of exploration efforts to be able to push down into the east to make contact with those Hydrons. And then, of course, a wormhole here. Hotel wormhole. This is the one that leads up to ISC space, and they've been using that to great effect. Now, the Federation had conquered Alpina, for example, and they've still got this faction, this Romulan faction in the southwest corner, very unhappy with the Federation, very on brand, looking to be able to potentially reach out and touch what's going on here. Federation 7 Fleet, is it? No, nothing. So if the Romulans decide to reach out and touch the Federation, they certainly could, and there's not much the Feds could do about it. If we take away the ships real quick, you can see the distribution of bases. The Feds have some good YDKs established in very key locations, like around this Romulan faction. Good YDKs established in the border region of the Kzinti. Just the question is, do they have the ships to be able to effectively defend what it is they're going to do? Very interesting, especially since the Federation pushed so hard to make contact with the Kzinti. What's going to happen now? I wonder. And especially with a new player running that faction. How is that going to evolve the diplomacy? Because the diplomacy is the key. How is that going to run the diplomacy going forward? Very interesting to see how this evolves in the coming turns. And lastly, let's talk about our Kzinti friends. So our Kzinti friends, the big news, of course, is the massive fleet, which essentially, according to our galactic news, remember, they only report the truth, are bringing the weight of the Kzinti Navy, all of it, onto this focal point in this area. Certainly, if I'm the Kzinti, 1, 2, 3, 4, I am demolishing this base with all prejudice to be able to remove and eliminate their supply reach into Kzinti space. Other than that, though, they've got exploration efforts going hard into the southwest. Now, granted, into the southwest, and they've made this border agreement with the Tholians. Very nice of them. Now that they've got that established, the Kzinti have mentioned that they have a desire to reach out to their furry companions in the north and catfight. So if they're going to catfight up top, it'll be interesting to see how the Kzinti build out their fleet and in which direction they go. The Kzinti, economically better than the Borak at 62 versus the 59. They are, a good almost 4 EP ahead of the Lyrans. Although, to be fair, Lyrans, Borak, Kzinti, that's the middle of the pack. Like, that's 4, 5, 6. We are quite literally the average factions in the game. Everyone above and below is, of course, above and below us. But it'll be very interesting to see where that goes. The Kzinti have a lot of, I think, flexibility here because their western border, no one there. Looks like the Federation are particularly vulnerable right now, at least in their positioning, and they can buy them a lot of time. And the Kzinti already have ships and survey activity happening up north. They can continue building that out. If we take away the ships real quick, you can look at their base distribution, and they are solid. Just like the Paravians and the ISC, look at this religious 2-base distribution of base construction. Fantastic. The only exception is out here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 supply, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. The Kzinti have it. 4 supply. They're building a base out this way and extending their supply range as far out as they can go. So with 4 supply, that fleet can attack, destroy, and retrograde right back. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And for the Kzinti to assume a war economy, it's so worth their while to do that, because then they will get the benefits of war economy, 100% of their econ, to be able to build out and expand up north. They'll have lots of time to recover those war turns before they actually engage the Lyrans, assuming they can come to some terms with the Federation for peace. Yeah. So the beginning of this game, or the beginning of this episode, it's all about the diplomacy, the dilemma that these factions face about whether to go to war or go to peace, and so on. So in the south of the game, we don't have a lot of that dilemma going on. It's all about expansion. In the middle of the map, and I'll zoom out one more time. In the middle of the map, you've got the Federation and the Kzinti, the Lyrans and the Borak. These 4 factions are in the thick of it. These 4 factions are currently jostling for positioning in order to be successful as they go forward. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot to sort out, and it's going to be very interesting to see how these factions deal with the dynamics of multiple fronts and multiple factions contesting their territory. And as we go north, oh my God, the ISC are in a conundrum. Are they going to be able to establish peaceful relations with Lost Muskrat and the Carnarvon, or are they going to go toe-to-toe? The Carnarvon, are they going to decide to pick a fight with the yellow or the blue and yellow with the Borak? Are they going to pick a fight and try and grab some territory? If I'm the Carnarvon, arguably that's a strategy that's looking very attractive on the table, especially with the amount of ships that each one of those factions have, Borak and ISC. If they're going to pick a fight, are they going to pick one or the other, or will the other faction come to the defense of the other, and they will be a combined alliance fighting against, or at least collusion against the Carnarvon should they attack? I don't know. The Lyrans, are they going to get in on this action to be able to stop or put some kind of control on Carnarvon expansion? The Klingons. Man, no one is getting in their way. They've got as much freedom to be able to do whatever they want. Obviously, the Carnarvons and the Klingons are in cahoots with each other, and they're getting along very copacetically. The Klingons are continuing to expand aggressively, and they have the largest economy of the game. If there is a winner in this game right now, it is the Klingons. They are kicking butt and taking names. They are going to continue their exponential growth and expansion. The more ships they build, the more territory they can expand, and they've got no guardrails on what they can accomplish in the short and medium term. The only thing that could throw a wrench into their gears is if the Carnarvon, being their only neighbor, were to decide to pick a fight with them. And based on the fact that the Klingons now have the biggest military in the game, I don't know if that's a great idea. So, let's go back and chat about that. All right, guys. We've been going for quite a bit here. Oh my goodness. Look at that. 1 hour. Oh, 2 hours. So I think it's time for us to drop the curtain on this wonderful conversation. But what do you think about what is going on the map? The top row, the Klingons, the Carnarvon, the ISC. How do you think that dynamic is going to play out? What do you think about those middle factions, the Lyrans and the Kzinti, the Borak and the Federation? How are they going to be able to interact and get along? Are the Hydrans in the south going to be able to make contact with the Peravians and put pressure on that religious expansion that they seem to be encountering? Are the Tholians going to be able to bat away the pestering nuisance of Klingon interference and be able to get on track to be able to take over and sort of get their economy rolling when it comes to their expansion and exploration? Certainly, they seem to have an ally with the Kzinti, with that new border that's been established. How is that going to evolve going forward? So much to discuss, so much to be able to go back and forth with. We're going to jump into our Discord channel and have those conversations. Let's take a look let's take a look at those issues, have a conversation, and figure out what's going on. But if you're not already part of our Discord channel, then you can head over to that QR code or that link in the corner and join us for coffee and Discord, and you can be part of that witty banter, that back and forth, and that involved conversation about the strategy of this game. Also, folks that support us on Coffee and Patreon get first crack of being able to jump in on these games. For example, that just happened with the Tholium player and the Federation player having to leave this game, and we had substitutes come in. So if you are interested in games like this, want to jump in and be able to test your mettle, then please feel free to consider jumping in this game, getting involved, and doing what you do, because it might be exciting for you if that is your plan. For those of you, if you are so interested, and if we have such a thrust of interest in the game, then maybe there's an opportunity to introduce some new players. We shall see. Of course, our campaigns are always sort of evolving and going on, and we're launching new campaigns every year. So if you are a supporter, you are first in line to be able to get in on those campaigns when that time comes. All right. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up, tickle the algorithm just the right way, get us to the double digits on the likes before the live stream is done, as there are 11 of you watching and only 9 likes. Let me see. Have I liked my own? There we go. Boom. Look at that. We are at 10 likes. Bam. Thank you very much, everybody. I will see you next week on this channel. Bye for now.